Welcome to the England pod. Lee Carsley's England under-21s are in the semi-finals of the Euros. On Saturday night, they beat Spain 3-1 with goals from James McAtee, from Harvey Elliott, and a late penalty from Elliot Anderson, and a lovely little bit of afters as well, led by Charlie Cresswell. And what a performance it was, what a result. We went into that game, George Ellick, a little bit fearful after a bit of a patchy group stage with one of each, with a win, a draw and a loss in the group stage. We weren't sure what we were going to see against tournament favourites Spain. But Carsley's side, they came out the blocks pretty quickly, despite Spain getting an early penalty, which was overturned. We'll talk about that separately. But there was just great levels of energy on show. Clearly, there was a reaction from the performance against Germany a few days earlier, and England well worth the win.
Yeah, and often when tournament favourites knocked out, it can be a bit of a, the team who win it and knock them out do it with their backs against the wall. But it was none of that. England dominated large parts of this game, had by far the better chances, and were fully deserving, I think, of the progression. And I don't think Spain, in any facet, could really argue with that. They might feel aggrieved that they had a penalty overturned. I was quite surprised to see it overturned. Not because I think it was a penalty, just because you don't often see those handballs when it strikes the hand be overturned, and that set. It could have been a very awkward start for England to be 1-0 down within 3 minutes, but instead we were 2-0 up within 15. The goals coming from one from a set piece where we've been really dangerous. Even though it comes with some luck when you look at the goal that Cresswell scored against Czechia and the general carnage that Cresswell has caused throughout the tournament. The fact that we scored a set piece goal shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And then the fact the second goal came from a rebound after some poor keeping, but then a feature of this whole tournament has been Jarell Quansah stepping out of defence with the ball and looking to either marauder down the wings or marauder through the middle, and that's exactly what he did here with Harvey Elliott, who said himself, it was interesting in the post-match that Elliott said, which is, I wouldn't say the most flattering thing for Quansah, but he said, I've been playing with him for 3 or 4 seasons. I wanted him to pass, but I know Jarell, I knew he was going to shoot. And therefore, he was there to anticipate the run, keep himself onside and anticipate that the shot was going to come and there might be a rebound, which he stuck away. But the most, I would say, the biggest thing for England about this one is that having conceded the penalty and gone 2-1 down, and having had to withstand some pressure in the first 10-15 minutes of the second half, the last 25 minutes was phenomenally good. For a team to be 2-1 up in a knockout game and to still have a lot of the ball, to still look by far the better team, create the better chances and come way closer to scoring. We had the Hinchelwood header that was just over the bar. We had Wanieri and Norton Cuffy with 2 very similar attempts as they kind of ran off the right-hand channel across the pitch and managed to get shots off down that kind of through the middle. Norton Cuffy's that came incredibly close with a left-footed shot that just went over the bar. When the goal came from Anderson, it was deserved, and Beadle was relatively untested. He made a double save where I'd probably be quite harsh and say for the first one it's a mistake to parry the ball back into danger. He should either catch it or move it away. But I didn't, watching that last 25 minutes or so, it really felt like it was a case of will England rue their missed chances rather than coming under severe pressure.
Yeah, and there was a header that Spain had, a sort of decent-ish headed chance towards the end, but apart from that, the double save, they didn't really create much in the second half. I was really surprised at how easily Spain surrendered possession, continually trying to play out, and their defenders were trying to sort of slip it through the lines into the midfield, and they just kept really bad passes, getting nowhere near their targets, and England could just intercept it easily again and again. And it was great from England, great levels of energy on show. I thought the subs coming off the bench all played their part, all really helped get us over the line and help us finish strong like we did in that game. But let's go back to the start, because I think Lee Carsley, he's finally had his bit of special sauce. He's deployed his last bit of special sauce. Maybe we're on to the next bottle now. But that early penalty decision was crucial, because if that penalty does get given and Spain go 1-0 up within 2 minutes, second game in a row that we would have conceded within the first few minutes, heads might drop, the whole atmosphere, everything could change. And I agree with you. I was really surprised that referee overturned the penalty, and between the referee and VAR, the penalty was overturned. VAR recommended that the referee go to the screen to look at it, and then he decided to overturn his decision. He gave that penalty straight away. The shot comes in. Cresswell has his arms behind his back in the sort of modern fashion, but then decides to unclasp his hands, and his right arm comes away from his body. It's still and this is probably what the referee decided on in the end. When the ball hits his arm is by the side of his body, but it has still moved from behind his back. So, I wouldn't. If that's the other way round, it's one of those where if it's the other way round, I think I'm saying we should have had a penalty there. So I think if you're Spanish, you're pretty pissed off that decision was overturned, but it was, and we just went on from there, and we took our lucky moment, and we grasped the opportunity that it presented us to put it behind us and keep going. And just the energy levels on show from England, as you were saying in the last pod, George, about Alex Scott coming off the bench and really trying to G up the players with his challenges and his general sort of attitude, and it looked like that really had spread to the whole squad for this game, because we were snapping into challenges, we were winning interceptions, we were pressing high, and we were deservedly 2-0 up pretty quickly. In the first goal, as you said, set piece, the ball drops to the Spain failed to clear the first ball properly. It drops in the 6-yard box. McAtee's there to pounce on it. Nice sort of improvised finish into the corner, 1-0 up. Great anticipation from Harvey Elliott to follow up Quanza's shot. I mean, a great run from Quanza, confidently bringing the ball out. Spain just invited him, though, into that space. And I guess they were probably expecting him to pass, and they should have been, perhaps they should have been switched on like Harvey Elliott was. They should have known he was going to shoot. And then the keeper, a poor effort from him. He should have, as you said, Beadle a minute ago, should have collected it or tried to push it away from danger, but he's pushed it straight back into the 6-yard box, and Elliott's there to pounce. But then, after that, when we're 2-0 up, we actually nearly went 3-0 up within the next sort of minute or so. A brilliant move from front to back. We absolutely sliced Spain apart. And it was Livramento overlapping on the right-hand side, puts the ball across the 6-yard box. Hutchinson's coming in, but I think that one of the Spanish defenders manages to clear it. It's the goalkeeper, actually, gets his leg out and clears it, which would have been 3-0. We really would have been in dreamland there. But after that, Spain did come back into it. They did have a spell where they kind of regrouped, they calmed themselves, they put us under a bit of pressure, and they eventually won themselves a penalty this time that wasn't overturned and was deservedly given. Quanza just dangling a leg square on, dangling a leg. One of the Spanish attackers is sort of jinking his way through, little 1-2, jinking his way through into the box and gets brought down. Beadle dives early, makes it easy for Keira to score the penalty. And then we had to sort of weather it a bit. We did have to get to half-time. I think there was still sort of 6-7 minutes before half-time, plus a bit of stoppage, and it was a difficult spell for us, but we got there. We got to half-time, we regrouped. And then, as you said, the second half, despite a couple of moments for Spain here and there, we had the better chances in the second half. The players that came off the bench really helped us. And it was a fitting moment, really, that Jonathan Rowe, his run from deep, when there was a England player who was, I can't remember which one, but it was an England player who was offside, I think, when the ball was played forward, but he just sort of stopped, and then Rowe just ran from deep, great pace to get to the ball before the Spanish goalkeeper, wins the penalty. Anderson dispatches it coolly, and it was the 93rd minute of 94, so we were home and dry then. But I think that moment, that penalty, the way that we won it was really emblematic of the levels of effort that the England players put into winning this match.
Yeah, I totally agree. Rowe, and it's also been the case all tournament, where I think it's fitting that it was a substitute who won the penalty and a substitute who put it away. Lee Carsley is clearly somebody who absolutely doesn't subscribe to the idea of a first 11 or like a starting 11, or a strongest 11 even. He uses the players that he starts and the players off the bench in a way that maximises their possible impact. And I'm sure going into Wednesday night's game, we'll see another shuffling of the pack in terms of who starts, especially because if you look at our standout performers in the tournament so far, I would say Anderson, Scott, and certainly Morton, who last night was so good. Like, brave decision to bring Tyler Morton in from the start, ahead of Hayden Hackney as well, and ahead of Elliot Anderson. And he was really, really good. And it was telling that he was still on the pitch at the end of the game as well. But yeah, for Anderson to come and score the penalty, but also John Rowe, who started the opening 2 games off the bench, showing some real pace. And you basically knew 3 seconds before the foul was made that was going to be a penalty, because he was always getting there, and the keeper was never going to pull out. And he was very clever, and he kind of did quite well to almost look like he was vaulting the keeper's challenge, but ensuring there was enough contact to go down. It was clever. So yeah, but it's good squad work, and this is, again, it's another example where, like, we can read so much into group performances and results in group games, and it kind of reminds me of that game against Belgium. With Southgate's England, where we lost and we came second in the group, and everyone was... It's just that Germany game realistically just didn't really matter. It mattered for about 5 minutes early in the second half, when there was a chance that we could lose the game and Slovenia could win it by a big enough margin for us to send us out. But after that, it was fairly irrelevant. The tournament basically started in earnest last night, and we showed what we were all about. And yeah, going into Wednesday, I'm really confident that we should be able to we'll go into it as favourites, and I'm confident we should be able to go through.
Yeah, you're right. That was a big decision from Carsley to not start Anderson, who'd been one of the better players so far. And again, it's what we've come to expect from Carsley, hasn't it? In that, as you say, there don't appear to be any real favourites. He is very mindful, I think, of the short time between these games in this tournament, as we discussed on the last pod. We've got a little bit more time till the next game. Got 3 days, haven't we, till we play the next game? So that's an extra day's recovery for the boys, which is good. It'd be interesting to see what he goes for there. But what's good to see is that even with all the rotation and Anderson not starting, and when Airy came off the bench, Norton Cuffey came off the bench, none of these players seem phased. They all seem to be really together. And they're coming off the bench, and they're giving everything. They're really contributing. And then I think, as we saw after the final whistle, there really is some spirit about this group, because they weren't running off and celebrating. They were backing each other up. It seemed like it was led by Charlie Cresswell, who seemed to be very, very angry about something that one of the Spanish players had done. Perhaps a pretty naughty late challenge on Livramento, which Livramento managed to kind of get out of the way of, but it was a really high, kind of petulant, annoyed challenge from someone who knew the game was gone, from one of the Spanish players, and that kind of kicked things off. But you know what? I don't mind it. I don't mind seeing those scenes at the end from England.
Yeah.
A nice bit of spirit and fight that didn't go too far. That's really good. And I think James Mackesy was interviewed after the game, and he kind of said the same thing. He was like, look, we were the two big teams going into this tournament. They lost their heads, and we were happy to let them lose their heads. But, we've got to give them a bit back if they start coming at us. So fair play.
Yeah. I totally agree. Also, I quite like the fact that after scoring the penalty, even though, I guess the game's kind of done, Elliot Anderson just turned around and walked back. It was almost like, cool, job done here, but that, it's not job done in terms of the tournament itself. I'm not going to run into the corner and have a big pile on. Let's just move on. And that probably rattled Spain as well, I would have thought. Seeing your opposition send you out and not really even react to it. But I agree. I think the afters. There's a good photo tweeted by Henry Winter with Alex Scott just kind of standing on the sideline surveying the carnage around them.
Oh, it's great.
And it does. It feels like it is an under-21s tournament, and there'll be big football fans who support the England's men team and will support the Lionesses in a couple of weeks, who won't really be paying it much attention. But I'd really urge people to watch on Wednesday night, because even things like seeing how much it mattered to Ashley Cole at the final whistle, as he kind of slapped his colleague on the back and kind of buried his head in his neck. You could see how nervous Carsley was at points in the second half. Like, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. And when you think, I said it before, when you think Cole Palmer scored the winner in the last final when we won it, if you think Curtis Jones and Anthony Gordon are key parts of that team, are now key parts of the England senior squad. Like, this is, these are players who are hoping to taste major international tournament, albeit youth tournament victory 12 months before we hope to win the World Cup. And I'm sure there will be a couple of these players who might even be in that squad. So, it feels, at times you watch youth tournaments and, you get up for it because you care, but it doesn't feel like a big deal generally. But this feels, to me at least, like a really significant week for English football.
Yeah, very much so. There's been a bit of talk about Jay Stansfield, and he started up front, but we've talked at length across all the under-21 pods about the absence of Liam Delap and the problems that's caused us in terms of not having his sort of profile of striker in the squad. But Stansfield got the nod for this game. Some people, I think, are a bit critical of him. I think he's got a bit of a reputation. He's kind of a bit of an easy target, isn't he? Because of the money that was spent on him by Birmingham, and the fact that some people are a bit kind of sceptical of the whole Birmingham situation. He scored a lot of penalties, but I didn't think he was that bad last night. I think he was a good part of our pressing and our energy, and he worked really hard. He didn't have loads of chances. There was one in the second half that was deflected over the bar, but he didn't make great contact with it anyway. It was a bit under his feet.
What a pass that was from Hutchinson.
Oh, brilliant little back heel. Really, looked like he was going to just slip Quansah through, who again was marauding up from the back, play a little pass into Hutchinson. But yeah, really nice little fade and a back heel into Stansfield, but who couldn't quite take advantage of it. Maybe he was a bit surprised by it, I think. But then there was another moment just before Stansfield was taken off. Maybe he was knackered by then, to be honest. But he was kind of put clean through, but looked like he wasn't going to get there. Then the Spanish defender completely messed up his attempt to intercept, and Stansfield was then again through, and it just looked like he had nothing left in his legs. He couldn't really accelerate away from the defender. Tried to slow down and slip a little pass through to one of the runners, and it was intercepted by the defence. So, yeah, I don't think he was too bad, but it's like it wouldn't surprise me all the same if Rowe started ahead of him, or a different player started in that position in the next game.
Yeah, it's so hard with Stansfield because he absolutely should not be judged off the back of his transfer fee. And obviously that transfer fee is up for debate. Birmingham fans will tell you that it's less than the 20 million that was reported, but there are a lot of kind of very reputable journalists who say that it was, or will be at least, after add-ons, that 20 million. But that's kind of irrelevant. Like, the one thing to me, and you mentioned it there, like he doesn't score that many goals from open play. Joe Hart has been saying a lot on GoCom, was talking about how he's a natural striker, he's getting him on the ball in the box. I'm not entirely sure that's necessarily true. Like, he's someone who will score goals, but he's not like a pure penalty box, 6-yard box striker. He offers a lot more than that. And maybe his goal scoring instinct at this stage of his career needs work, and I'm sure he will get better at it. But from a technical standpoint, he's not as good as a lot of our players. I don't really think that's up for debate. Like, I think when, as I was just saying a second ago, a lot of these guys playing this week will play for the England senior men's team quite soon. I'd be pretty surprised if Jay Stansfield ends up being an England striker. Maybe he will, purely because we don't have very many coming through, but I don't think he's necessarily good enough to do that. I think he's someone who may be a very good championship striker, who may play in the Premier League for a few seasons. But when you consider how many good English strikers play in the Premier League, Dominic Solanke, for example, didn't get in the last squad, and he just got a big move to Spurs and has done pretty well at that. There's no shame in not being as good as Harvey Elliott or being as good as Alex Scott. But what he does offer is an unbelievable work rate, and in this game in particular, being able to press the Spanish, being able to win the ball back off them when they were sloppy in possession was so important, and leading the line really effectively. And it does feel like slotting into that more familiar 4-2-3-1 shape has really worked for England, and has got the best out of McAtee as well. So, in my mind at least, Stansfield should start because of what he offers out of possession, because what he offers in terms of a profile that we don't necessarily have. But he can still say he's not as good a footballer as John Rowe, and that can still be the case, because it's you don't just stick on your players who are the best players on the pitch. And also, as we saw last night, having Rowe's energy and pace later on in the game can really help too. So I hope he starts again.
England now move forward to face the Netherlands in a semi-final. Where have we heard that before? We'll talk a bit more about that in a second. On Wednesday in Bratislava, England will face off against the Netherlands in the semi-finals of the European Championship for a place in the final, which, of course, reminds us so much of where we were 12 months ago, George, when me, you and Ali, we got out there, we went out to Dortmund on a wing and a prayer to try and see England get to a final, and they did it. They beat the Netherlands 2-1 with that incredible moment from Ollie Watkins when he scored late on. And Ali, although he's not with us on the pod today, he, of course, was watching last night, and not surprisingly, he's had something of an about-face turn from his stance of, you know what, guys, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make it out to Slovakia this summer. As much as I love following the under-21s, I've got a lot going on. I think it's probably one to just, let's keep our powder dry for this one. All of a sudden, Ali Maxwell's getting a bit excited.
Morning, lads. I've woken up absolutely buzzing about that. I wasn't feeling great, if I'm honest, about our chances against the Spanish. But then George's analysis of that Spanish team in the last pod genuinely gave me some hope. And it seems that we just did a lot of the things that we often feel England don't do. Started quickly, started well, took chances, made the most of opposition errors, got a little bit of luck. But that second half performance really stands out and pleases me, and I'm sure everyone else, because we're conditioned to be a bit downbeat about England national teams, certainly the senior men's team. We're conditioned to expect disappointment and failure. And these boys definitely didn't play the game on that front. They stepped up and they won and they kept their heads and they showed great togetherness and they beat the Spanish again after beating them in the final 2 years ago. So unbelievably excited to be able to see and celebrate an England under-21s team progress to the semi-finals of the Euros. The main question that I have for the pod, because I know you'll have covered the game in great depth and I'm sure you'll have talked about Stansfield's pressing and Alex Scott being one of the greatest men ever produced by this island and or the island of Guernsey. But I've got a question about Wednesday, because it certainly hasn't escaped my attention that we're playing the Dutch in the semi-final, and my mind goes back to last summer where we played the Dutch in the semi-final in Dortmund, and it was unironically one of the best days of my life, and certainly certainly the best day of the England pod's life up to this point. And I'm sitting here thinking, kind of got to be there, don't I? Now, there's a few things that create obstacles here, but I think I can climb over the obstacles. Have I pitched it to my wife yet? No, I haven't. But frankly, this is a business trip and business trumps all. Secondly, finances. I'm putting together the final logistics, flights, etc., and I'll be presenting them to you guys forthwith. But I'm going to need sign-off because this is going to come from the England pod budget. If I'm to pitch it to Mrs. M as a business trip, that is absolutely necessary. So basically, for you guys to discuss, can I go to Bratislava, please, on Wednesday? The flight from Luton's at 5:30 a.m. I'll be flying back early the next morning. Certainly get some content out. Certainly will work hard and play hard. And I just think having an England pod representative in Bratislava for a semi-final against the Dutch, who we know will travel in numbers, big orange numbers, I think I need to be there. What do you think?
Right then. The budget is being calculated. The logistics are being looked at. Surely, we've got to grant this opportunity. We've got to sanction this trip, haven't we, George? I mean, we're probably not the big decision makers in this. I think Mrs. Maxwell might have something to say about this. But
well,
I think all parties need to get behind Maxwell and get him out to Slovakia.
As co-owner of the purse strings, I have to disagree and think I am a big part in who decides.
Okay.
As those watching this on YouTube may see, I'm wearing a kind of nautical themed shirt and have a painting of the sea behind me, and that's because I'm on holiday down on the south coast. So I cannot go because I'm with my in-laws and my wife and children. But I think you've been a bit hard done by here, because there was a time where the plan was for you and Ali and Charlie to go to Bratislava together. Ali's pulled out, you've made other plans, and then suddenly he's turned around and been like, actually, you know what, I'm going to go. So, I mean, I think Ali should absolutely go, but I think you should be going with him.
I had the feeling that this might happen. That the temptation might get the better of him should England perform. And this is exactly what's happened. But yes, I think hopefully Ali will get there and be with our social supremo Charlie out in Bratislava for the game. But let's talk about the game a little bit and what we might expect to see on Wednesday night. The Netherlands, something of a surprise winner in the other quarter-final on Saturday against Portugal in a game that I've watched extended highlights. I can't believe they've got through. Portugal had so many shots, absolutely battered them, but just couldn't get the ball into the net. Their finishing was poor, but they engineered a lot of opportunities. And the Dutch went down to 10 men early on in the first half with a second booking for Mark van Bommel's son, whose first name has escaped me at this moment. But he got sent off, which means he will be missing for the semi-final. But the Dutch did get a goal on the counter-attack, and they did look like their main threat, right? They looked like a team that actually weren't great at soaking up pressure because they conceded a lot of chances, but when they did get the opportunity to break, they did it quite well.
Yeah, it was weird where at 0-0, 11v11, Portugal were by far the better team, and Thomas missed one very good opportunity and another couple just evaded him, and it kind of felt like a matter of time until they went ahead. And then the red card came, Ruben van Bommel with just brainless fouls kind of within 2 minutes of each other. I don't know what he's doing with the second one. Like, it's just a ridiculous tackle to make on a yellow card at that stage of the game. But in a weird way, Portugal, as you'd expect, 11v10, continue to dominate possession and have a lot of chances, and missed a penalty when through a VAR check for an obvious foul, which was struck well by Quandra, I think his name is, who hit the posts, which will be a big swing for them. But the Netherlands, late on in the first half, had a couple of good opportunities. They had a goal ruled out for offsides, and they looked kind of dangerous on the counter, and the threat was always there, even though they didn't really have any of the ball. Portugal, as you say, created loads of opportunities in the second half and couldn't put one away. But when the goal came through Ian Maatsen, who I just can't really believe that someone who I've been watching play football for as long as I have him is playing in the under-21 Euros, age 23. But Maatsen kind of moved. He started the game at left back. He moved up to left wing and played a sumptuous ball through to Poku, who'd come off the bench, who rounded the keeper and scored. It was kind of weirdly like a mirror image of Josh Murphy's goal against Bolton in the playoff final for Oxford just over a year ago, with Ruben Rodriguez playing the ball there. But it was another really good bit of transition play, some sharp, crisp passing, quickly turning deep possession into a goal scoring opportunity they put away, and it was a smash and grab win. I think there are definitely warning signs for England in terms of the way that even with 10 men, the Netherlands were able to not create loads of chances, but to create some really good chances when they did attack and transition, because I think we're probably expecting them to dominate the ball again. Van Bommel is a key player for them, so his absence is definitely a good thing after his 2 yellow cards and sending off. But in Maatsen, Millian Manhoff, the Stoke attacker, they've got some players we're fairly familiar with, and but England will go into it as favourites. I think there was a lot to like from England's perspective about the way that the Netherlands defended. I think we'll have no issue creating chances, but they're, especially when we play such a high line, with Quanta, Jarell and Marauder getting forward at every opportunity. I'd be surprised if they didn't hurt us in transition as well.
A little bit of a spring in his step, perhaps, from Jarell after the news that he's looking very likely to go to Bayer Leverkusen, which will be a bit of fun for him, get some more regular first-team football. Good news for England as well, I think, in general. That I think Thomas Tuchel will be very pleased to see one of his sort of fringe squad players playing for a top European club. You mentioned England are favourites there. Yep, the bookies very much agree. Looking like that, pretty solid favourites going into this game. Favourites for the tournament now, I guess, as well. But we'll see how the two other quarterfinals play out on Sunday. But looking at the game just quickly before we finish, hard to predict, really, in terms of what Carsley will do in terms of team lineup and team selection. But as we've discussed, wouldn't be surprised to see a few things mixed up. But the back four seems fairly... has been fairly consistent, certainly with the two centre-halves and with Livramento at least. But, yeah, do you think maybe Anderson comes back in, or just a bit of a mixing up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I would never try and predict what Carsley's going to do, because he makes decisions that you can't necessarily predict, and in a good way, I would say, especially from an opposition preparation perspective. It's a bit of a nightmare, I guess, for the opposition to try and work out or second guess how we're going to set up. I think Norton Cuffy came off the bench again yesterday and was absolutely superb. I feel sorry for him that in a career that's going to be stifled by England's incredible options at right back, he's already stifled by having Livramento ahead of him in that role at the moment. Hinchelwood, obviously currently playing at fullback too, who played well yesterday. I think that's probably pretty settled with those five. And then with Morton, Scott, and Anderson, it's a bit of a headache how to fit them all in, because we can't do that. The fact that Morton played 90 suggests maybe he'll be back to Scott and Anderson and Morton off the bench. And then, in terms of the forward players, Elliott and McAtee are probably locks, and Hutchinson, I guess. And so then it's a case of whether or not he reverts back to the peeling 10s I mentioned earlier, with Rowe coming in, or if he plays Rowe as a genuine forward, or if Stansfield gets another run out. So, but as I say that, I never would have predicted in a million years that Morton would have started on Saturday, and that's what happened. So we'll see what tricks Lee's got up his sleeve. And obviously we're recording this at kind of midday on Sunday, so we don't know what happens in the France and the Germany games, but it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think we would quite like it if we could see a couple of upsets. Maybe Denmark and Italy getting through would be the icing on the cake after a great day yesterday.
We can't really finish this episode looking ahead to the prospect of Ali Maxwell attending a semi-final on European soil against the Netherlands without harking back to last summer and Ali's post-euphoric win, slightly inebriated rant about the Dutch. This is a chance for Ali to go head-to-head with the Dutch once more. And it'll be interesting to see whether there's any contrition from Ali. Is he going to extend his hand in friendship to his Dutch compatriots, or will he be out there going head-to-head with them?
Let's just hope that none of the fans out there recognise him. It could be a disaster on the streets of Bratislava.
Will he indeed find the Dutch to be base and without humour, lacking in wit once more? I've got a feeling that perhaps the Dutch fans who follow the under-21s might be a bit more friendly than the hordes that we saw following the men's senior team last summer. But we'll see. And hopefully Ali gets out there with Charlie and has a nice time. Hopefully Lee Carsley's men can get themselves into another under-21 Euros final. But we'll be across it, of course, on the England pod. We'll be back with a reaction pod to that game on Wednesday next week. Come on, lads. Come on, England.